You're just gonna start recording now?
Hello?
Hey, Steve, how are you?
Hi.
Hi.
Are you recording right now?
Yeah, Sean, press record. Sh- sh-
Okay.
Sean is a fan. This is how Sean works. Sean is a. I'm gonna tell my observations about Sean that I haven't told Sean yet. This
Okay.
is Sean really likes the ad lib of podcasts.
Okay.
Like he likes
Yeah.
it when you can kind of like see kind of like the back end of stuff, like when that
Uh-huh.
comes to
Uh-huh.
light in the
Uh-huh.
podcast. And so
Yeah.
like I'll have thoughts or well I don't even really bring it up anymore because it was just like the
Hmm.
first couple episodes and I was like, shouldn't I cut this out and shouldn't I cut this out and should I don't know, does it sound professional to do that? Da, 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 da. And Sean's like, no, it sounds like you're a real person.
Hmm.
Just
That's where all the personality is.
that's where all of the personality is. Like, don't cut it out. It's like I
Yeah.
love the tangents because
Hmm.
I'm like, oh my god, Sean. Like the first couple episodes that I like listened to, I was just I was commenting on how many tangents I go on, and he
Hmm.
said he goes the tangents are great.
Hmm. Hmm. That's what people listen for.
Yeah. So he pressed record while it was ringing. So we are on.
Okay. Excellent. Hi.
Hi, Steve. How are you today?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. I tried to have my laptop repaired and it came back with more problems than I went in with. So
Oh no.
I'm going
How,
to have to call him up again,
yeah.
see what he can do about it.
I don't even know how that's
Yeah.
possible. I don't, but I also know like nothing about computer. That's not true. I don't know nothing about computers, but I know very
Mm-hmm.
little about computers.
Mm-hmm.
Little enough that I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't be able to repair one.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking maybe I should have opened it up and done it myself. Anyway, yeah,
Maybe.
but other than that, I'm doing great. I was super excited about I was just telling everybody about this reinforcement training. I,
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. And yeah, you don't worry about it being recording. It's totally fine. And also they
mm-hmm.
we can cut we can cut out awkward things too. Just be
No,
like just be like,
totally okay.
that was
Yeah.
weird. And then we'll cut it out.
Mm-hmm.
So perfect. And I don't know how you would like to be introduced. What I was telling Sean is that
Mm-hmm.
you're a relationship and polyamorous coach in
Mm-hmm.
the Oakland, San Francisco Bay area.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know if there was any other way that you wanted to be introduced or wanted people to know about you.
Well, yeah, I think that's mainly it. I've been polyamorous for 7 years, 8 years now.
Mm-hmm.
I've now been polyamorous for longer than my marriage was. I was
Wow.
married for 7 years, and then I got divorced in 2011. It's when the divorce was finalized,
Uh-huh.
and read The Ethical Slut, and I was like, "Hey, this is a great idea." My brain, my logical brain, the logical reasoning side of it was like, "This totally makes sense. I'm gonna do it." And then there was a lot of things that I was just emotionally not prepared for.
Yeah,
So the first
absolutely.
2 years, the first 2 years were like, woo, crazy. Uh, and then, I realized that polyamory is coming more into like mainstream view right now. And so there's a lot of people
Mm-hmm.
who are like in a very similar situation. Wow, this makes total sense. I can understand that point of view. And then they start. And then there's
Mm-hmm.
some things are coming up against that just they are not prepared for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that is probably one of the reasons why both you and I became coaches because there is a need because I'm the same way. When I became polyamorous, I feel like the first couple of years were just me wrecking ball my way through things.
Mm-hmm.
Just like I'm gonna do this now. Oh crap,
Yeah, I
that
know.
failed. Okay, I'm gonna do this now. Oh well, okay, well that part of it kind of worked, and now this part doesn't work, so I'm gonna
Right,
do this now. And
right. Yeah. But that's the thing is that, like, that's the thing about, like, exploring and experimenting
Hmm.
is that you need to make those mistakes. And so like a lot of the coaching is not necessarily about how do you avoid the mistakes, but it's more like how do you handle it when you do make a
Hmm.
mistake, right?
Yeah.
Or when you cross somebody's boundaries but you didn't know it. Maybe they didn't even know there's a boundary there, right?
Yeah, and
So,
I think also having the language around it, and both of us have done work where, we've learned that language is so important, and
mhm,
really having the language around how you're feeling and what you need, and
mhm,
how the situation occurred for you, and being able to look at how the situation might be for the other people involved as well, and then being able to, because there's the feeling of all of that, there's a feeling, and then there's the experience of all of that, but
mhm,
then there's
mhm,
the actual, like, putting it into language and
mhm,
communication, and saying what you
mhm,
need,
mhm.
and saying what
Yep.
worked and saying what didn't work. And I feel, at least for on my end, that's where most of the coaching comes in, where it's like, okay, this is like, I get your experience. Now let's work
Mhm.
on the language of your experience such that you can communicate, like, and move forward with your partner or partners, or what have you, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's something a lot of times when people come to me and they're like, "Well, how do I tell? How do I tell them?" Like, because a lot of there's this thing that I call the trap of self-expression.
Mm.
It's actually a trap. Like when you find yourself saying things to yourself, like we talk to ourselves all the time, right?
Hmm.
You have that little phrase that goes off in your head. Like you're telling yourself, "Well, I'm just going to tell them what I think."
Right.
Right? I'm just gonna let them know what's going on. Right?
Yeah.
I'm just gonna be real. Right?
Oh
And then
yeah,
it
I
comes
love
it's
that. I'm just gonna be real with people.
gonna be real with you. You're an asshole. I really hated that. Don't ever do that again.
Uh-huh.
Right? Like it's like you can say don't do that again, but it doesn't have to come across like you did something wrong.
Right.
Right?
Like,
You
I'm
know? It's like
right, you're wrong.
exactly,
Like the
exactly. And that's
Matilda,
what
the I'm right or you're wrong. I'm big, you're little.
mm,
There's nothing you
is
can do
that
about
is
it.
this, or, exactly, exactly. Um, yeah, so it's a lot of what you said, the coaching around communication is like
Mhm.
how do you still say what needs to be said, but like take out a lot of that extra emotionality behind it. There's actually something that's coming up for me right now. My sister was actually came across a situation at work for her, and she got really bad like performance review. Like they're saying like, yeah, you got attitude, you got a bad attitude, and you're working too slow, or you're not delivering on what you said you would deliver. You know, not meeting deadlines, things like that. She's like, what do I
Mhm.
do? What do I say? And like she came to me and she was saying like, I'm thinking I'm just gonna go in and ask them like, okay, what does this mean? What does that mean? And actually, what we centered on for her was um, number one, the idea of like if you go up to them and say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just going to do whatever you tell me to do. I'm not going to complain anymore, and I'll deliver everything at the due date that you set for me." I'm just like, that's not realistic. That's not going to work for you, right?
Mhm.
If they give you an unrealistic deadline and you cut off your ability to say that doesn't work for you, this, you're just everybody's just going to be upset.
Right.
So, like when we're saying like take away the emotionality of it, doesn't mean like just kind of give in. Oh, you're right.
Mhm.
You don't have to say that they're right in order to get them to like understand what's happening, or in order to get them to have the experience that you understand them,
Mhm.
right? Like if they say, "Oh, actually, you just have a bad attitude," it's like, "Oh, right." So I got that. I got that you that I have a bad attitude, like in your experience. You
Mhm.
don't have to sit there and say, "Oh, you're right. I'm so terrible." Like,
Yeah.
no, you don't have to say that. You don't have to say that. But what we really centered on for my sister is like, okay, what she could be responsible for is like when she has something to say and doesn't say it, it turns into like resentment. Like she's been
Yes.
working on this project and suddenly they say, because she's a graphic designer. She's like, oh, okay, wait, actually, this shade of black is all wrong. We need to change it to this other shade of black. And then she has to go back and redo everything, right? And she's got this feeling of frustration. Right? I got to redo the whole thing. And I'm like, okay, but there's something, the frustration is because you're not saying something. There's something you're not saying. Like, well, yeah, I'm pissed off because I got to do this thing all over again. It's like, no, well, that's another thing. That's the emotional reaction. The emotional reaction is frustration, a feeling you've wasted your time. I don't really need to communicate that. But there's something else here. Like, they changed the parameters. You got to go back and do the whole thing. And they didn't shift the deadline.
Right.
And you didn't say anything about that. You just take it in and it's just like be frustrated, right? But you're not actually being authentic and really being in communication, saying, okay, got it. I'm going to go back. I'm going to change all the blacks to a different shade of black and let you know it's not going to be done by this due date. It's going to take me another 3-4 days. Okay? Like, really just being upfront about it, right?
Yeah.
So I got her to see, like, there's just communication that's missing. She doesn't have to give in to everything that they say. Just be real, just be authentic. And you don't have to, all the frustration and the anger and all those feelings and stuff. It's like, okay, there's this team management leadership program. And one of the things they say is, stop, change, start.
I love that phrase.
So, right? So it's like, and the metaphor I gave, for some reason, I tend to use a lot of soldier metaphors because when you put it to that kind of context, it makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. But it's like, you're sitting there, you're a soldier, you're on the front lines. They say, fight, boom, 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 boom. You're fighting. There's people like dying all over you, right? And then they say, retreat. Now, the soldier is not going to spend time thinking about, like, why did they give this order? Oh my God, we wasted our time. Look at all these people that died for no reason. Now we got to no, you just stop fighting and you run. Right? It's like, doesn't matter. This is what they say. You're going this way. Now you're going the other way. Right? In order to be effective in that kind of situation, just change direction. It's okay.
Yeah, change direction. And I think, well, a couple of things that I'm going to point out about what you said is that the being real and the being authentic about it is not necessarily the sharing of the I'm angry, you piss me off, this is frustrating, this is stupid, why did you have to do this, da 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 da. Because I think when we were kind of being sarcastic earlier, like I'm just gonna be real about it, blah blah blah. That that I think that most people have that that is being real. Like, you piss me off. This is frustrating. This is unfair. Why did you do this to me? Now, da 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 da. Like, the being real is like the emotional reaction to something. And what you're saying,
the emotional vomit.
Yeah, the emotional vomit of something.
And then the other person just covered.
Yes, and then you slime other people. Yeah, exactly. And then no one wins at all because now you've pissed them off and you're still pissed off, by the way. Like, just you telling someone that you're pissed off has never made anyone less pissed off. If anything, it makes people more pissed off. It's like, now you're more right about it. Yeah. And so, like, but the being real, the being authentic is actually the underneath, like, when you take away the initial, like, emotional reaction, it's like, okay, how can I communicate my needs in this situation? Or how can I communicate the reality of the situation that is now, my reality is I have to change all of this to a different shade of black. This is going to now take me another 3 days. And now the deadline is moved. So being able to communicate that, which is the reality of the situation and the authenticity of the situation, and being able to communicate that in a way such that you're left empowered because you're like, hey, yes, absolutely, I will change this black to this black, and now it's going to take 3 days, and now the deadline is moved. How does that sound? And then being able to have a dialogue about it instead of just like being real.
Right. Yeah, I think that the key is like how people relate to managers and people in quote unquote higher authority than them. And I put it in quotes because it's like when people when people sense like, oh, this is my boss, right? Oh, I have to do what they say. I'm not allowed to like say anything back, right? Actually, like the boss and the managers, and this is what I've coached other clients on, like they're there to have everyone win.
Yeah.
And to go back to like a soldier kind of metaphor, like the captain tells somebody, you need to bring this equipment over there, right? Now, if that person can't lift it on their own, but he doesn't say anything and just struggles with it, the equipment is not going to get there. Everybody dies.
Yeah.
And the captain is like, what the hell? I told you to do it and you didn't do it. Now everybody's dead.
Yeah.
Right? But if he could be like, if the guy just says, okay, well, I need help. I need like maybe one or two other people to help me lift this. Okay, now the captain might be like, oh, God damn it. I don't know if we can spare those people, but really needs to get done. Okay, here's one other person.
Yeah.
Now it has an impact. But the task gets done. And the captain now has the information to make an informed decision about what to do. What is the actual situation? It's too heavy for one person to lift. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely something that I say in my coaching calls. It's like, no one can give you what you need if you don't tell anyone what you need. No one can give you what you need unless you tell people what you need. And I know from first-hand experience how hard it is to say what you need sometimes. You know, it takes being vulnerable. It takes being courageous. It takes like, you know, giving something up. Like I'm really prideful and really stubborn. Like that's something that I actively have to be like, oh, that's my pride speaking, or that's me being stubborn. You know, I have to notice when that comes up for me. And so sometimes it really takes something for me to like say what I need, but then every single time, every time that I say what I need, I get what I need. And maybe it's not in the way that I think that I'm going to get it, but like then things actually can start moving because you actually say what you need. Yeah.
Yeah, can you give me an example? I feel like you're saying this because there's something that recently happened in your life.
You're so insightful, Steve.
Tell me what happened.
Tell me what. Now I have to say it on the podcast. This is next level vulnerability. Okay.
I know, right? This is why people listen to your podcast, because they want to know you.
I know. Lead by example, right? So what happened actually recently this month was I was set up at the beginning of the month to make enough money for the month. And I was actually really excited and relieved at the beginning of September. I was like, oh my God, this is so great. Like I have this coming up. I have this coming up. I have this set up in place. I have this, blah, 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 blah. I was like, this is, this month is going to be just fantastic. I'm so pumped. I can start planning for October. And then in about the second week of September, 3 of the main sources of income that I was going to get were either canceled or, whatever happened, such that I wasn't actually going to receive that money anymore. And so now, instead of like having plenty of what I need, I was actually didn't have enough money to support myself this month. And I was like, and some of it was like going into like continuous months, and now that's not happening anymore either. And so I was just like, oh, well, this is a serious issue. And I was super down about it for like several days. And I was, I beating myself up about it, just being like, what am I going to do? Like, I can't, like, I was in this place of like, I can't reach out for help. I was like, I can't reach out for help. And I was like, I can't tell people that like, that all of this happened and that I'm struggling and, like, I just have to figure it out. Right. And then finally I was just like, okay, I can.
My coach senses are like perking up here. It's like, what is under there? There's something under there.
No. And it's just, and I just, one of the things was, I realized, okay, I can figure it out. I can, take the actions. I know how to do all that. I know how to generate income. I know how to, I know, right? And I am not going to be able to get the money that I need right now without being in communication with people. Like I have to tell people what's
Mm-hmm.
going on. And
Mm-hmm.
I was like, the thing that's stopping me from sharing is because I'm embarrassed. I I feel bad about asking for money. It's the pride. It's like that pride and
Mm-hmm.
like being stubborn, like, no, like I'm going to figure it out and like I'm not going to let anybody contribute to me and like blah, 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 like all of that. Excuse me. And I was just like, okay, I have to swallow all of that. I got that it's there and I can't do this on my own. Like there's just no way that I can do this on my own. And if I do try to do it on my own, I'm just going to suffer through it. And so I did. I started reaching out. I called my parents. I started sharing with friends. I actually
Mm-hmm.
even made a Facebook post about a new living situation because I was planning on moving out of my current apartment in the next month and a half anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But I was just like, okay, well, maybe in my next living situation, I could do a work trade. Brandy and I are actually moving in together, but she can't move in until later. And so I was already going to have this kind of like month and a half to 3 months, like interim period where I didn't really know where I was going to live between my apartment now and moving in with her. And so I was just like, okay, well, maybe in that period, I could do like a work trade with someone, or I could live somewhere for free, or I could, something like that. And so I could kind of catch back up. And so I just put it out there on Facebook. I was just like, hey, this is what I'm looking for. I literally, within an hour, had 4 people calling me, like, please come live with me. You can babysit my kids. That would be so helpful. Like, I would
Mm-hmm.
love to if you live at our place for free and help me take care of the house. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Da da da. Like all this
Yeah.
stuff. Like, and then I even had a friend of mine who I helped out, a couple of years ago. We went and had lunch, and I was sharing with him, everything. Obviously, I was sharing with him in more detail of like what was going on, and he reached out to me about a week later because he was like, well, here, let me help you out because I helped him out a couple of years ago when he was kind of in a similar situation, and he was like, I want to pay it back to you. I want to give you the X amount of money, da da da. And he was like, let me give that to you, next Wednesday or whatever it was. And I was like, oh my gosh. I was like, and still like it still like hurt my pride a little bit. I was just like,
Mm.
ooh, okay, yes, I thank you. Thank you. I so appreciate you. Thank you. And but then he reached out to me next Wednesday or Thursday, and he was like, "You know what? I thought about it, and I don't think that giving you that money would be helpful at all." It's like
Mm-hmm.
it would just be a quick fix to something, and it actually wouldn't accomplish that much. He was like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm moving back to Seattle. I want to get an apartment now. I was going to start renting it out before I started living there. But how about I just get, and he actually, not an apartment, he wants to get a house. He was like, I want to get a house. And he's like, how about you just live in my house until I move to Seattle? And,
Whoa.
and I was like, are you serious? And he was like, yeah. He's like, of course.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Yeah. And
So,
I was just like,
so that where you're living right now?
no, 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 no. I'm not.
Oh.
So he doesn't have it yet. And
Oh,
I'm
okay.
and I don't have to move out of my current place for another month and a half or so.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so I'm still at my current place, but he was like, yeah, he's like, let's work it out. He's like, by the time
Mm-hmm.
you have to move
Mm-hmm.
out, I'll have the house, and then you can just move into the house.
Mm.
And I was just like, what? Are you
Mm-hmm.
serious
Mm-hmm.
right now? This is
Mm-hmm.
happening? And it was just, I swallowed my pride, I swallowed my stubbornness, and I was like, the only way that this is ever going to work is if I let people to contribute to me and I'm in communication about
Mm-hmm.
what I need, because I tell people all the
Mm-hmm.
time, you can't get what you need if no one knows what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, all
This
right,
is
I got to take my own coaching.
so this there's a thing that I say. So I in the team management leadership program, which is a landmark program,
Mm-hmm.
we have this thing where like we have like a quote unquote game
Mm-hmm.
that we play, and then we have certain things that we want to accomplish, and so we'll like we'll plan it out. We will plan out the whole game for the next 3 months, 3 or 4 months, however long the quarter is, right? And like when people start like writing out their game, they start with a very specific. I'm gonna apply for the loan. I'm gonna like send in the application, and then I'm gonna apply to like 10 different banks, and I'm gonna get these many responses. And I'm gonna be approved by one, and I'm gonna select one.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And a lot of times, like what I advise people is, okay, this is very specific. It's very specific. And then I say something like, you got to leave room for the magic.
Yeah.
Because the goal is to get money.
Mm-hmm.
I get that it might come from a bank. Consider that it might come from somewhere else, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can apply for the loans, but don't put the milestone as, I've gotten the loan.
Mm-hmm.
The milestone is actually, I've gotten the money.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be a loan. It doesn't have to be from a bank.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Just put that little bit of flexibility in there so you're not locked in and you're open to the opportunities that come up just randomly. Are you are you taking actions to just have magic happen? Or are you just kind of like zeroed in and focused on your singular goal? It's going to happen this way.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That'll work, and it's effective for some things, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you open yourself up that it could happen another way, right, and take actions like what you said, just telling people, posting on Facebook, I don't know how it's going to happen, but this is what I need, right? And work with other people, have other people contribute to you, and be open to doing things you normally wouldn't do, like accepting somebody else's help. For you, it's accepting somebody else's help, right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, and then magic happens. Oh my God, this thing, and it turns your whole world upside down.
Yeah, because that was my goal was I need a free place to live. Like I was like, for this interim period between my apartment and moving in with Brandy, I was like, I'm gonna live for free, and I was like, I don't know how this can happen. Yeah, and so yeah,
and it actually allows for more possible solutions than if you were like super narrowly focused.
Like,
right?
Oh, I can, yeah, exactly.
I'm going to convince a landlord to have me stay there for free. That's
right.
That's one possible solution. But if you're only looking at that, none of the other things, I mean, they're totally there, but they're just passing you by because you're not
open to it.
You're not open to it.
Yeah, totally.
Right?
Absolutely.
So I have a question.
What's up?
There's aspects of Landmark that are kind of like sounds similar to like law of attraction thing. Okay?
Yeah.
So I'm an atheist.
Me too.
I also love physics, astrophysics, and quantum physics.
Me
quantum
too.
mechanics.
Steve,
right?
I think the other thing that the listeners should know, I'm going to pause you for a second. I think the other thing that the listeners should know is that we just really started to meet each other last week. And I just keep discovering like how similar we are.
Yeah.
And, like each time that you share something about you, I'm like, me too. Me too. Me too. Me too. What?
Relationship coach, polyamorous, movement. I do like circus and burlesque, and you do
yoga, parkour.
Yeah. And we're both atheists, and we love physics and shit. Can I?
Yeah,
say
you can swear.
Stuff?
You can swear.
Oh, this is not FCC regulated.
Yeah, I put on it's on Anchor app, and then I put the little button on Anchor app that says explicit. So, yeah.
Okay.
It's explicit content.
Say all the shit I want.
That's right. Okay, quantum physics, go.
Okay. So one of the things is I don't. There's a lot of like spiritual people or law of attraction people that like misunderstand quantum mechanics, right? And there's like a misuse of the principles of quantum mechanics to make it sound all spiritual and stuff, right? But like there is something to it. I don't think it's like it's not rooted in the principles of law of attraction. For the listeners, if you don't know what it is, it's like it's like the whole idea of like manifesting something.
Mm-hmm.
You just think about it real hard and it's going to happen. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's like really short. I know I'm not representing it well here. I'm intentionally not representing it well,
Okay,
but
good.
to me, that's what it seems like. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't, and then they explain a lot of it with like quantum mechanics and vibrations. If you're sending out a vibration, the universe is going to respond to you. Right. Now I
Mm-hmm.
get that the experience of that is completely valid and authentic, and that's what they're experiencing. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And the point of view is valid, and I think it works. But just because the method works doesn't mean is explained through quantum mechanics, right? I think it's a psychological phenomenon between human beings,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like there's something that happens. We got mirror neurons happening in our brains that like when somebody else looks sad, we feel sad, right?
Mm-hmm.
When somebody else looks happy, we feel happy,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have these kinds of things. And so like when I present a certain way, it tends to be mirrored in the people around me. Now, this is what
Mm-hmm.
people who believe in law of attraction and attribute it to quantum mechanics, they say it's your vibration. It's
Mm-hmm.
your energy. It's just the energy about you. And it's true from a human experience point of view. It feels like that. There's this vibe that they have. There's a feeling about it. But actually
Mm-hmm.
what I say is like, that's how you experience it. It's not the reality of it.
Okay.
It's a psychological phenomenon where we're noticing tiny little things. Now, people study this kind of thing.
Right.
Got a psychologist, sociologist, right? And like, there's like little things that you do in like your posture, your tone of voice, your facial expressions that people would interpret it as a vibe or a feeling or energy, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, in actuality, or like maybe not even actuality, because I don't really think human beings can actually know what reality actually is.
I
so,
agree with that. I
so it's
absolutely
like
agree with that.
as close as we can get to the human understanding of reality, like scientifically, it can be reduced to a certain shape of the eye, a certain tone of voice, or something that is interpreted as a vibe.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Autistic people are really good at figuring out, like really centering in on like exactly what cues there are that people interpret as the vibe. Because people who are not autistic, they just feel it as a vibe.
Mm.
They don't know why, but autistic people have to. They'll pick it out and they'll figure it out. Oh, it's
Mm-hmm.
because this, and they'll tell you the cues, meaning somebody's being sarcastic or something. Right?
Gotcha. Okay, I'm following you.
Right. So anyways, this is like my idea of like law of attraction, that point of view is extremely valid and it works, but the way they explain it is not actually how it works.
Interesting.
But it actually doesn't matter how it works. We just know that it works.
Right, exactly. Well,
Right.
and I feel like it's that way for most thing that so I was a political science major and what it was one of my majors in college.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very interesting for me watching the news and reading about politics and things like that. And just there is
Uh-huh.
the actual explanation for political theory, and there's the actual definitions of different, political things, right?
Mm.
Methodologies, whether that be, democracy, whether that be capitalism, whether that be like people use the term fascist all the time in just the
Mm-hmm.
absolute wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
But so there's a difference between what the actual definition of something is
Mm-hmm.
and how people use it. Right. But
Yeah.
the
Mm-hmm.
feeling behind it, like the cultural feeling behind it, like regardless of whether someone has the correct or incorrect definition of being a fascist,
Mm-hmm.
the feeling behind it is the same. They're like, I don't agree with it. Right. I don't agree with that,
Mm.
even if they don't completely understand what fascism is,
Mm.
that it's just like, this is something that I don't agree with. So on the one hand, for me, I always kind of have that debate with myself whether it's like, does it really matter if they know the actual definition or not?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or I would say, honestly, for me, it comes down to yes. I think that it really does matter what the actual definition of that
Mm-hmm.
is, of that thing
Mm-hmm.
is. So, like for me, inside of the law of like what you were sharing with the law of attraction, like I think that it would
Mm-hmm.
make a difference if people do know exactly what that
Mm-hmm.
is. And inside of just like, colloquial conversations, it might not seem like it makes that big of a difference. But I think that, when we talk about language and we talk about being specific with language, when you have a unifying term and a unifying definition for something and everyone understands it in the same or similar ways, that it makes a really big difference on a grander scale. It's kind of like that,
Mm-hmm.
one droplet of water
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sort of
Sure.
analogy.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know that we could go on tangents about all of this stuff forever
Mm-hmm.
and ever and ever. Obviously, we
Yeah. Yeah.
continually are discovering how much we can talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And I would love to talk with you about what we chatted about yesterday, which is
Mm-hmm. Positive reinforcement training.
positive reinforcement training. Okay, so tell
Mm-hmm.
me about positive reinforcement training and why, like, first of all, like, why do you want to talk about that? Like, why is that something where you're like, this is really relevant and I think people should know about it?
Okay. So I first got interested in it. Uh, I just my Metamore, which is my partner's lover, right?
Mm-hmm.
I heard that he put on this workshop like 10 years ago, and then he stopped because he created two events at the same time. One of them, they both started taking off, but he just chose one of them and followed that for 10 years. And then I was like, and then my partner was telling me about this workshop that he put on. That was actually pretty good. It's called How to Train Your Man. How to Train a Man.
How to train
All
a
right.
man.
How to Train a Man, right?
Okay.
That was the title.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then I was like, hey, we should do something like that. I'm interested in like putting on something similar to that. Maybe not necessarily with that title, but so I started talking to him, and then he was like, okay, well, why don't you read these things first? So he gave me like 3 books to read, and it's all about behavioral psychology and reinforcement training, whether it's positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm reading books that are actually written by like animal trainers, talking about dogs, people who train dogs or cats or horses, and actually one of the books is by a dolphin trainer, and the other book is by someone who trained killer whales. Right?
Wow.
So, like, these are like extremely intelligent creatures.
Right.
So
Whales are my favorite
like,
animal.
Yeah. So, and what I'm getting from just reading these books, like, okay, here's the thing. It's so interesting because, okay, the idea of the workshop is, as we go throughout our lives, whether we know it or not, whether we're aware of it or not, we are training everyone around us how to behave or not behave around us.
Mm-hmm.
And simultaneously, we are being trained by everyone around us how to behave around them. So it kind of goes both ways, right? I'm constantly training everyone. Everyone's constantly training me. And it's happening whether we're aware of it or not. So the workshop is here to show everybody that it's happening, and also showing everybody how it works, right? So all these things about like in relationships, what happens is like, suddenly everything's kind of dead. Oh, my husband doesn't listen to me anymore. Or like I walk in the room. This is actually something that happened in my life with my roommates. Walk in the room and they just ignore me, right?
Mm-hmm.
They can be explained through reinforcement training. Consider their behavior is 100% trained by me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, can you imagine, like, if you just look throughout your whole life and you see, because there's this idea of like, well, I'm responsible for my actions. You're responsible for your actions. I'm not responsible for you. What you do, you got free will, all that kind of stuff. But if you consider everything that people do around you is trained and trainable.
So you're saying that walking in and having your roommates ignore you could be like, consider that, that's, you have trained your roommates to ignore you.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I've trained them to ignore me and I've reinforced it.
Okay.
Such that now when I enter the room, they don't say hi to me anymore. They don't even look at me. It's like I'm not even there. And then I started to get pissed off about it.
Because you didn't know,
right?
You didn't like realize that you've trained them to do that.
Yeah. This is like right before I started reading the text,
mm-hmm.
right? 2-3 weeks ago is when I started reading the textbooks, right?
Mm-hmm.
And right before I was just going through this whole thing of like, I don't really like living here, right? Like, they're ignoring me. I was like actually searching on Craigslist for like different places to live. Right? I'm just going to move out. I don't want to do, right? So one of the books is called Don't Shoot the Dog. And there's like 8 different methods to either reinforce something to happen again or reinforce something to not happen again, right? And the number one method, so method number 1, shoot the dog, or rather it's called shoot the animal, right? It's 100% effective. If they do something you don't want and you shoot that dog, you're never going to have to deal with it again.
That escalated very quickly.
Yeah, there's different means. There's different means of shooting the animal, right?
Uh-huh.
Like, and in my situation, it was like, I'm going to move.
Gotcha.
If I do that, it's 100% effective. I don't have to deal with that behavior ever again.
Mm-hmm.
Or like if you're in a relationship, usually you can just break up with them.
Yeah, right? You can just leave. You just cut off the problem. It's never going to be a problem ever again.
It's not going to be a problem ever again. You just remove the person or remove the animal,
mm-hmm.
right? But actually, what I saw was, it started to open my eyes. Like, wait a minute. Actually, before my eyes opened, what happened was that like, I was looking at all the things in my life, and there was like this little rebellion that happened in me. Like I rejected the material, right? I was like, damn it, no, people don't control me. I'm in control. I'm free. I can do whatever I want, right? I reject this idea that I don't want to have to manipulate people. I'm not going to be manipulative and sneaky that way, right?
Right.
And I even turned it towards like my metamor. I turned that kind of like, what would it, rebelliousness?
Yeah.
Against
rebellion,
my metamor.
resistance,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, you don't get to control me. I'm going to train you. I'm going to control you. You don't get to control. It was like all that stuff. And then funny. And I just sat down and I kept reading it. And then I came to the realization, it's like, it's not that people are actively, consciously trying to do it. It's subconsciously happening all the time.
Yeah.
Now, once I'm aware of it, I can totally use it to manipulate people.
If you choose to do that.
Can.
Yeah.
If I choose to, right? But once people get a whiff of he's trying to manipulate me, game's over.
Right.
Right? So it's like, then I started to see like, oh, this is a way for me to gain access to actually like really making huge changes in my life and like just the people around me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so one of the things I took on was like, okay, well, if I walk in the room and my roommates ignore me, considering that I've trained them to do that, I can train them to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And since then, in like the 2-3 weeks since then, I'd walk in the room and I go, hi, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing well. And then we start a conversation, right? Mm-hmm. Every time I walk in the room, that's what I do, right? And now I can walk in the room and then they'll say hi first and they'll look at me and go, hi. And it actually only took like 3 or 4 days of me doing that. And they just changed. And I didn't
Right.
have to sit down with them and have a conversation, be like, look, guys, you've been ignoring me. I don't really like that. Maybe you could say hi and blah, blah, blah. Or I didn't have to have any kind of conversations like that.
Right.
I just start like, you know,
And it's
doing the
not
thing.
totally. And it's not like they
Yeah.
were, it was your perception in the first place that they were ignoring you,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like they could,
exactly.
going back to what we said a little bit earlier, where, you're not really, humans aren't really living in reality. Humans are living in their perceptions. And so, your perception was these people are ignoring me. And maybe that's not how it was for them. Maybe they were just like, oh, Steve doesn't, Steve comes in and he does his thing and that's fine. Like maybe they had nothing about it whatsoever.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so if you would have sat down and
like,
been like, if you would have sat down with them and been like, hey guys, you're ignoring me, all this stuff. And then they would have been like, what are you talking about? Like, no, you
jeez.
Like, gotta be so sensitive. Jesus.
You're just whining all the time.
And I'm not saying that it would have gone that way, but yeah, but then there's like the actual, but if you take away that, like, okay, I walk in, they say nothing. I don't want it to be that way. So taking on this, like, hey, how are you? How are things going? That's friggin' brilliant.
Yeah, I know. So that's just one example. That's like, I think the first thing that happened. And then I talked with my metamor about this, and he said, like, okay, that's great. You got results, right? He said, like, I got the results I wanted, right? But something that he said was, we don't know whether you were using positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement.
Okay.
Right? And here's the thing is, like, I don't know yet. I don't want to bring it up to them. Right? That's not something I bring up to them. I just know that I got the results I wanted, right? So, for example, like negative reinforcement, I used this on a call this morning. When cats train their owners, they'll use negative reinforcement. They'll do something annoying, and then they'll stop when you do what they want you to do. They're going to scratch the door. They're going to meow. They're going to make noise. They're going to knock something over. They're going to sit on your face. Right?
I have two cats. This is very applicable to me. Totally.
And then when you feed them or when you play with them or when you pet them, then they're going to stop doing the annoying thing. Right? I don't think they know that they're doing negative. I don't think their intent is to annoy you. But they're just like, oh, when I do this, I get what I want.
Right.
Right? And then here's the other thing is that their use of negative reinforcement is positively reinforced by the owner when they actually do.
When they do the thing.
When they actually do the thing. Like the cat's at the door. And then it's like 4 a.m, but the owner gets up and then feeds them.
Right. Yeah, so it's just like, now the cat's like, oh, this is effective.
Totally works. I'm going to do it again.
Yeah.
Right? But if you don't want the cat to do that, don't feed them. Don't. And then they're going to learn not to do it. Because it doesn't work anymore.
Right.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I'm totally following you. Yeah.
Okay. So how does this relate to polyamory? How are we going to relate this to polyamory?
Yeah. Well, and I thought that it was really interesting in our conversation yesterday. One of the things that you said was that positive reinforcement, before we go into the polyamory thing, just like super quick, that the positive reinforcement, like even though the negative reinforcement, like you don't know if it was positive or negative because you don't know if like your roommates actually liked or didn't like, the saying hi or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
I would argue that they do, but that's just me. But I don't know that. That's my perception. And, but when you have positive reinforcement, it was like, what did you say? You said positive reinforcement, neutral something.
And then
negative, but that the positive reinforcement has it be lasting and has it be workable. And like the negative reinforcement like didn't.
Well, both are effective, except here's the thing is that negative reinforcement doesn't really work in training cats. Cats don't respond to negative reinforcement. They use it, but they don't respond to it, right? Um,
But what about with
here's the thing.
humans?
Here's the thing.
Okay.
Humans and dogs actually behave very similarly because
Okay.
we have the idea of social structure, social hierarchy, right? And dogs can understand punishment and negative reinforcement, whereas cats don't, right? That's a cool thing I learned from the book that I read. Anyway, so like we did this thing. So my metamor created an assignment for me to create a little kit where you have a bunch of different objects and then a clicker, like the little clicker that they use for like cat and dog training, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we were playing the game where it's like I would just lay all the objects out on the table. So we got like little colorful balls and little colorful pieces of string, little colorful pipe cleaners and like little cups and things. And I think of something that I want him to do, and I don't tell him. And then he's just gonna like when I'm ready, I say go, and then he's just gonna start doing things. And then when he starts doing something that is close to what I actually want him to do, I'll click. Right? Now I created in my mind a 7-step process for him to do. Like you got to grab one fuzzy ball of each color, put it inside the little cupcake, and then close the cupcake. Right?
Okay.
And there were like 6 different colors. So you have to figure out which colors, not 2 of the same color. No, right? But I only had the clicker. I didn't have anything to tell him no. I only had something to tell him yes.
Okay.
And I thought it was really complicated. He actually completed it in 45 seconds.
What? That's crazy.
45 seconds. Using only the clicker.
In my brain, I'm like, that's impossible. What? How did that happen?
I know. It's so fast. I was like, oh my God, I thought it was so hard.
Yeah.
Right? But it went really fast. Right? Huh. Now, on the flip side, we did 2 more games. He introduced this thing called the rattle. And the rattle is, no, don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there were like certain objects that I would pick out, which should be like, don't interact with that, don't interact with that, however many I would choose. I chose 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
And very quickly he learned, don't touch the black pen, don't touch the red pen.
Mm-hmm.
And then he still completed it took longer to complete the task because he's confused about what he can't touch.
Right.
Right? Yeah. But then he said, okay, we're doing an example of how people normally treat each other.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so he didn't tell me what he was going to do, but I was the person doing the thing, and he's the guy with the clicker and the rattle. And so I just started reaching for something. I touched one thing, he rattled. And then I went and touched another thing, and he rattled. Mm-hmm. And then I touched a third thing, and there's a rattle. And I'm just like, what? And after about 20 seconds, I'm just like, I'm done. I don't want to play anymore. I just can't win.
This is stupid.
Right? Because what he says is, like, most people out in life, what they're going to do is they're going to punish everything that isn't exactly what they want.
Yeah.
And it just makes the other person frustrated because they actually want to please you. The other person wants to please you.
Mm-hmm.
But when you say, no, not that, a little bit different. Can you do that different? It's like, you're constantly telling them they're doing the wrong thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets frustrating for the other person. And what's missing there is like to understand this person wants to win with you. This person wants to please you. This person wants to be a friend. This person wants to be a good lover or whatever. They want that, right? Mm-hmm. If you're constantly telling them, no, not that, no, not this. And there's just this feeling of like, oh, I can't do anything right. And what took me like 20 seconds sometimes is dragged out for a few months or a few years. And then it's like, what happens when somebody receives too much negative reinforcement is that they just shut down.
Yeah.
In dolphins, they sink to the bottom of the pool.
Oh, wow.
And they don't do anything. Right?
Wow.
That means that you've shut them down.
Right.
That's why, like, couples have been together for a while. Like, one of them will come home, the other partner is just sitting on the couch watching TV. Right?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't understand why he doesn't like talk to me. And then they have a conversation like, when I come home, I really want you to talk to me more. Right? Mm-hmm. It's like, whoa, that's more negative reinforcement. More like, nah.
You're doing something wrong.
No, Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
You're doing something
Like,
wrong. You're just sitting on
you're
the couch. You're
training
doing
them.
something wrong.
Yeah, yeah. You're actually training them not to interact with you
Mm-hmm.
because interacting with you is unpleasant. It's a negative reinforcement to stop talking to you,
Yeah.
right? I don't like talking to you, so I'm just not going to talk to you. Whew, that's actually better than talking to you. Okay, that's why they sit on the couch and not doing anything,
Mm-hmm.
right? Right? Oh, this is how it applies to like relationships,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's like a way that it manifests, absolutely. And so
yeah,
what would be so then if you've been in a relationship where okay, maybe someone can see themselves right now where you've been using, negative reinforcement like I don't like it when you do this, I don't like it when you do this, I wish that you would do this, why don't you ever do this, over and over and over again. You know, how do you correct or change or what do you now like what's the now action of it then?
okay. So like with somebody who's shut down,
Mhm.
right? So here's a caveat that they have with the reinforcement training, and it was in like the second chapter. They said you cannot reinforce behavior that is not already naturally occurring.
You cannot
If it
reinforce behavior that is
that's not
not
you
already
can't
naturally
positive
occurring.
yeah, you can't encourage more of a behavior if it hasn't happened
If
yet.
it hasn't happened yet. Yeah. Okay.
So it's kind of like I was actually listening to a YouTube video right before this. It's like B.F. Skinner, right? His training rat. The rat is running around the cage. He wants the rat to climb the ladder. But if they don't go near the ladder, he's not going to reward them at all. Now, if the rat never touches the ladder, can't train the rat to to climb the ladder. That's not possible,
Mhm.
right? Okay. But what happened is like the rat moves towards the ladder. Oh, there you go, reward. Here's some food.
Mhm.
And then pretty soon, like they're moving towards the ladder. Then they touch the ladder, and then they'll start to climb up the ladder, right? So it's like at the point that they've shut down, it's like there's this thing. The book says there's something called a jackpot. You just kind of wake them up again. You just give them a whole lot of reward for like nothing, and they'll be like, what's going on? Suddenly I have all this stuff, and then it gets their attention again,
Uh-huh.
and it makes them active again, right? But I think also like this is my understanding of where reinforcement training and like landmark conversations come in.
Okay.
Landmark conversations are the conversations where it's like, hey, this is how it's been. I'm taking responsibility, and this is how I want it to be. Are you in on this with me?
Mhm. Like
Right?
recognizing that you've been training them to like the example of like you come home, your partner's on the couch and
Yeah.
doesn't say anything to you, kind of with your
Yeah.
roommates, right? Like taking the case like I've been training this person to do this and
Right.
then
Right.
owning up to it, right? Just being
Yeah.
like, "Hey, I've been, being this way with you." And,
Yeah.
and I see that the one of the outcomes, one of the results, one of the impacts is that now you're like sitting on the couch like not wanting to talk to me. And I get that
Yeah.
I have been the one who has you be
Yeah.
doing that or has this be now
Yeah.
the case in our relationship.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So like those conversations bring about new behavior. It's like clears away what was there,
Mhm.
and then creates for them like a new set of actions to do,
Mhm.
right? Which you can then reinforce when it happens, right?
Mhm.
Now, if you have that conversation, all right, I want you to say hi to me when I walk in, and then okay, I'll do that, and then the next day you walk in and you go, hi, how's it going? And then you say like, what, you didn't get off the couch and give me a hug, right? If you do that negative reinforcement again
Mhm. It's just
or
right back.
punishment,
Yeah.
they're just like, oh god damn it, I can't win with you, right? It's the same thing. I don't want to play anymore.
Yeah.
It's all negative.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think for me what's there is that like some sort of positive reinforcement is showing
Yeah.
gratitude. Even if
Yeah.
they don't get up off the couch, maybe you see that they did the dishes or something. Just like, thank you for
Yeah.
doing the dishes today. Or even, you can make up I don't want to say make up, but like even if it's not happening in that moment, like something to be grateful for. Like, hey, thank you. I know that you've
Yeah.
been working really hard all day, and that you, just by virtue of you being here, shows that you're
Uh-huh.
really committed to being with me and being in this
Yeah.
relationship.
Hmm.
And I just really appreciate that about you.
Yeah. Yeah. What's coming up for me is like love languages.
Oh yeah,
And
yes.
actually, now I think about it, like, I think I had this thought yesterday. Love languages is how you determine what's reinforcing for them,
Uh-huh.
either positive or negative.
Yeah.
Either by giving them the thing that is their love language, or withholding the thing that is their love language.
Yeah. Or
Right?
giving or doing something that isn't their love language.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like, giving something that is like a negative thing. Like for me, a negative thing, like something that makes me question what they're is if they give me a gift.
Yeah. Me too.
Right? If they give me a gift and it's just like, what? Especially if I haven't seen them for a while. Like I haven't seen them for a month or two, and they come back and give me a gift, and I'm like, is this a bribe
Yeah. What's
because you didn't
happening?
spend time with me? I
Right.
don't want the gift.
Yeah.
Like, take the gift back. Give me your time.
Is that
Right?
your love is your love language quality time?
Physical touch, which requires quality time. It's
Which
like,
requires quality. That's true. Some of them,
can't.
blend very well together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you do
So
have to be in person for physical touch.
yeah. So if I haven't seen them for a while, that's like
Mm-hmm.
punishment to me,
Yeah.
which is hard.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, mine's
oh man.
mine's acts of service and physical touch. So I totally get that.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Whew. Wait, what was
Yeah.
the question again? Like,
What was the question again?
I
I
forgot
was
what the question was.
No, I was more just pointing to what I was getting at was just pointing to examples of when you like actual real life examples of positive and negative reinforcement. Blah, 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 blah. Real
Oh,
life
real life
examples
examples.
of positive and negative reinforcement.
Mm,
And what we were talking about was, if you have a relationship where it's gotten to the point where it has shut down, like there's been so much, negative reinforcement
mm,
that one or both people have shut down. It's like, okay, how do you open that back up? And so what we were
mm-hmm.
saying was that owning up to it, like owning up to like, hey, I've been training you to do, I don't know if you want to say training you, but I've been doing this, recognizing in yourself, I've been doing this to you, saying this
Mm,
to you, and I really get that like you can't do anything right around me.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And and apologizing, just being like, I'm really sorry
Mm-hmm.
that that's how it's been for you. Like you can't do anything right around me, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to do that anymore.
Oh yeah.
You know, and
Yeah.
so yeah, so that was kind of where and I think that what we said really illustrates it pretty well. But do you have anything
Yeah.
else around like and I'm gonna have to skedaddle here in about
Okay.
5 minutes, but
Okay.
do you have anything else as far as like what you can do or advice that you would give or coaching that you would give or something that would anything else that you want to share about opening up and using positive reinforcement in polyamorous relationships?
Mm. Something that I'm working on right now, because I'm still reading the books. I'm still reading the material before we actually delve into how to apply it.
Mm.
Right now. I'm working on identifying when I'm using positive reinforcement, when I'm using negative reinforcement, and overwhelmingly, I use negative reinforcement, as is with like nearly every single animal.
Mm.
Nearly every single animal, by and far, uses negative reinforcement a lot more than positive reinforcement. We're just wired that way,
Mm-hmm.
right? But just being able to look and see, and negative reinforcement is something like, I'm going to do something unpleasant or something that you don't necessarily want. It doesn't have to be a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
It can just be as much as like, I'm going to email you until you respond to my question.
Yeah.
It can be something like that. And it happens all the time. And a lot
Yeah.
of times it's just persistence. It's like, I just want to make sure that we have communication but it's actually negative reinforcement. I'm going to stop emailing you when you answer my question. Right?
Yeah.
For everybody who's listening, just start to be clear on what is positive reinforcement and what's negative reinforcement. And what it is, it's not necessarily grounded in what feels good and what doesn't feel good. Right? It's more grounded in positive reinforcement is when you use a positive reinforcement, it increases the likelihood it'll happen again. Right? When you use a negative reinforcer, it's like you'll do the thing. Like, what is it? Actually, it has the same impact. That's what makes it so difficult to tell which is which. Like, one is like, there's this unpleasant thing, and when it stops, you do the thing that I want you to do.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And a positive reinforcer is like, I do a thing that you like, not necessarily something that makes you feel good.
Yeah. Well, it seems like
I'm still
also that
centering
you
on
would
it.
be, yeah, no, totally. And well, because one of the things we said was that I'm really interested in like having this conversation with you again in 6 months and be like, okay, how's it going? Like, because I know that this is something
Yeah.
that's really new for you and really new in like your own experimenting and yourself and your relationships and your training and like all of it. And so I'd be really interested to see what your insight is and what your takeaway and what you have to say in like 6 months or so.
Yeah,
Because I think that would be really interesting.
totally.
One of my predictions is that I think that when, like, in the case of like, you don't know whether you got the result that you wanted, but you don't know whether or not it was positive or negative reinforcement. I think that one way in which you would be able to tell whether or not it's positive or negative reinforcement is how the relationship develops over time. Because if it's negative reinforcement, then how the relationship would develop over time is that there would be a strain or there would be some kind of constraint or there would be some sort of block,
Yeah.
right, in the
They're going to
relationship.
stop hanging out in the living room so that they don't have to say hi to me.
Yeah, or like lack of connection or like, or it would manifest in some other way, like they, then they start being snarky with you. I don't know, right? And I think that if it's positive reinforcement, that then over time, the connection and the love and the infinity would grow in that relationship.
Yeah. Like, I walk in the room and they're willingly saying hi and talking to me.
Right. Or they
Which
start,
is,
they start like opening up and sharing other things with you. Like I noticed that with, I work at a yoga studio and there's a girl who is a work trade person every Tuesday morning. And I teach every Tuesday morning. And so I'll come in and, I'll say hi and I'll ask her about herself and all this stuff. And I'll share things about me and I'll ask her questions and, I'll just be chatty with her and stuff like that. And one of the ways, I was thinking about that when you were sharing, because I was like, oh, that's, I would guess that that's positive reinforcement for her, because one of the things that I notice is that now she's willingly, I don't have to ask her questions anymore. Like she's just offering information about her. Like now we're friends, like now she's just like, oh my gosh, guess what I'm doing this weekend? Or my mom's coming into town, or you won't believe what happened to me, or blah, blah, blah. Like we have that open communication, that love, the connection, the affinity in that relationship. So I would say that, me coming in and it's 6 a.m. in the morning. So like me coming in at like 6 a.m. in the morning and just being chipper and friendly and curious about her was actually a positive reinforcement in that relationship, because that relationship has grown.
I'm gonna ask you to question, because it's a positive result.
It's a positive result. Okay.
It's a positive result.
Okay.
Not necessarily positive or negative reinforcement.
Okay.
But you can use negative reinforcement to train a dog not to poop inside the house. And it'll improve your relationship with the dog. The dog is now doing the right thing. You're getting along a lot better. The relationship is much better now. Now he's definitely pooping outside, but it doesn't mean you use positive reinforcement.
Okay. All right.
It has improved your relationship. You're getting along better. Now he knows what to do.
Yeah.
But not necessarily positive reinforcement, because the result is positive.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And now I'm like, okay, that adds another layer to think about.
the more I explore it, the more I'm just like, oh, it's actually hard to get a grasp on what actually is positive reinforcement, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
First, you got to know what it is, and then you can start using it, right?
Yeah.
So
Very interesting.
right now, I'm just kind of confused. I mean, I'm getting results, but I have no idea if I'm using positive or negative reinforcement. Right?
I love that. Thank you for being so authentic. Right now, I'm just confused.
We'll have another call in 6 months.
Yeah.
We'll see.
And then
I
check
can
back
explain
in.
this better.
Oh my gosh, that's
Okay.
so funny. But I think that the main takeaway that I'm getting is that you are training people around you all the time, and that you can be responsible in the fact that you're training people, and you don't have to be a victim of your circumstances, and you don't have to blame other people, and you don't have to, put it on others, that you can actually take the power in any situation and be like, wow, I am the underlying factor of the situation. I'm training people around me to be this way around me. So what can I do about that? What can I take responsibility for?
Yeah.
And affect change in
Excellent.
my relationships in my life. That's what I'm getting out of what you're sharing.
Yes, exactly. That's the whole point of all of this studying and training.
Yay,
So,
that's awesome. Well,
can I do a little like what do you call it? Saying my website and things.
Yes, please. That's what I was just. We are on the same page. Go for it.
Okay, great. Okay, I am Steve Yang. My business name is called Coach Steve Yang. It's at CoachSteveYang.com. Surprise! You can contact me through there. You can contact me through my Facebook business page. It's under the same name, Coach Steve Yang. Website is under construction right now, but you can still use it to contact me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Steve. I'm so glad that we got connected, and I'm so happy that you came on my podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me, and I can't wait to get to know you more, and I can't wait to talk with you again in like 6 months and see where you're at and how it's going, and like learn even more about positive reinforcement with the people around you.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. All right, we'll talk soon.
Okay, thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Love Dripping from the Walls. You can follow on Instagram or Facebook at Love Dripping from the Walls. Leave comments and questions, and I may share your thoughts on the podcast. Please rate and review on whatever platform you are listening on. If you want to support Love Dripping from the Walls, log on to the Anchor app and subscribe or give monthly donations. Keep listening and keep loving.